I'll call the meeting to order. It's Tuesday, March 23rd, year 2021. This would be the Executive Committee meeting with Peoria County's Board of Governors, trustees. I have a great guest here tonight. I can't wait to introduce you. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes of January 26th, the executive session? And again, I'll take them all at once, please. February 23rd's regular session. Thank you. And a second from Dr. Blair. Are there any additions or corrections?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Before you take that vote, may I ask that you have a substitute motion to allow members Bryant, Relaford, Duncan, and Allison to participate remotely.
He asked me that twice before I called the meeting to order, so that would be the third time. Could I get a motion to allow those three members in? Thank you, Rob. Second. Thank you, Mr. Fennell. All right, we're going to vote on attendance by phone for three. All those in favor?
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Okay, thank you, Scott. Really, he told me twice.
Joined.
So who are they again? Let me just make sure.
Randy, Jennifer, Rachel, and Betty.
Okay, thank you. On the floor, we have the resolution on both sets of minutes. Are there any additions or corrections? None? Please vote. All those in favor? Any opposed? I'll get it together here in a minute. Okay, so not on your agenda today, but should be on your agenda today, is a presentation. I have invited Mr. John Kelly, who's an at-large member. John, is this your first or second term? First term, serving Peoria City Council, all the way at the top and all the way down at the bottom. He is retired, financial services professional, and quite one heck of a family man. I've known John probably for more than half my life here, which is going on a few years. In the ethos of community redevelopment, he has been working on a very interesting leverage tool to promote infill development in our neighborhoods, and I would say the heritage neighborhoods very near my house, without the government having to put up a whole bunch of money and give it away. I think you frequently refer to this as free economic development. With no further ado, come on up and grab a mic and tell us how it all works.
I'll do it. Okay. Thank you.
I'm happy to do it down now.
Okay, thank you. And thank you all for taking your time to listen to me. But I think we have before the City Council a program which may bring a lot of new life into some of our older neighborhoods that need it so badly. Not only new life, but new people and new money. So technically it's called tax abatement. I prefer the term tax forgiveness, and according to a state statute that we're using, it's tax forgiveness for new construction. So we're going to talk about what it is, how does it work, where will it take place, and why is it good? So what is it? Well, first of all, as I said, it's on new construction for, according to the statute, single-family, owner-occupied homes. On those new homes, there will be no real estate tax for 10 years. We'll get into that in a moment. But the land underneath the house remains taxable. And it's usually for a certain number of years. In this case, it's a 10-year schedule. Remember, the building lot remains taxable, and all other land in the area remains taxable. Okay, so older neighborhoods are losing population. This program brings in new homeowners. These neighborhoods are losing value. This brings in new investment. And we've got hundreds of vacant lots, many of which the county owns, many of which the city owns. This sort of thing encourages infill of those vacant lots. So, does it work? Well, yes, it does work. It always works. We cannot find an example of tax abatement not bringing in lots of new investment and new population in residential areas. So, in Philadelphia passed a citywide tax abatement program in the year 2000. And as of 2016, home building in the city of Philadelphia was up 375%. And a quarter of that were in these older, challenged neighborhoods. I'm sorry, the suburban counties around Philadelphia during that time had negative growth, which was upside down from, of course, what had been happening up until that time. In Peoria, in 1987, we did tax abatement in the enterprise zone. Now, that's not quite the same. That was commercial industrial. That was not residential under a different state law, okay? And it was, the enterprise zone at the time was the entire riverfront of Peoria, from Darth Street all the way up to the McCluggage Bridge, kind of excluding most of downtown. In that period of time, monthly building permits rose 42%. As a matter of fact, Linda Daly was on the school board when we asked the school board to participate in that. Okay, so building permits were up 42%, but the dollar value of the building permits was up tenfold from what it had been before on a monthly basis. And we had $122 million worth of new construction in that enterprise zone, and you can imagine what kind of jobs were created in those areas. These were not burger flipper jobs. Okay, so where are we proposing that this tax abatement area in the city of Peoria be? Oops, I'm sorry. Can I get out of that? There we go. Okay, first on the far south side, everything in the city west of Western Avenue. So down to Bartonville, touching on West Peoria, that whole area. Beyond that, we will be talking about the North Valley as well. We'll talk from, this map is a little bit old. This map starts right near 74. If you can identify Wayne Street, I don't know if we have a pointer, but Wayne Street is down in the lower left. It starts now at Wayne Street and goes all the way up through Averyville. Okay, so with the success of a program like this, I'm doing it again. Okay, the valley neighborhoods become more attractive. The land values in that whole area, the more success there is, that general land value is going to be rising. And the revenues off that increased land value go to all the taxing bodies. This is a lot different than the TIF district, where City Hall keeps all that increase no matter where it comes from. Here, the only thing that's abated is the new construction. As that land value rises, all the taxing bodies participate. And the city and the county are going to capture their share of that new land revenue and, as I say here, put it in a bucket. And the cash in that bucket will fund the state income tax, some of the state income tax for these new owner-occupiers of these new homes. So the way it works is this way. If the city and the county realize, let's say, a fresh $100,000 from this, from the increased land value, and if these people who are getting tax abatement on their new homes have a total state income tax liability of $1 million, then each abatee will get 10% of their state income tax paid out of this fund. So the more income a person has that's moving into this area, the more money they'll get out of that fund because their tax liability is higher. Okay, here is the schedule. I said it's not quite a 10-year deal on a 100% basis. For the first 6 years, this person will get 100% of their taxes abated on their new home. Year number 7, they'll get an 80% abatement, and then it drops 20% a year. The next year, they'll get 60%, then 40, then 20. And after 10 years is up, we're in year 11, that house is now fully taxable. Okay, now one of the things that is left out of the current statute is rehabs. Now there are plenty of homes in these neighborhoods that have good bones, but, and if we can give them tax abatement on improvements that they make, we'll see a lot more improvements. So for the last 3 or 4 years, I've been trying to get our legislature to put an amendment on the existing statute that would allow rebates to participate. Before Senator Stoller was involved, Senator Weaver was the primary sponsor, and it actually passed the Senate 2 times and it died in the House each time. Passed unanimously, by the way. Now, Senator Kaler has decided to take it under his wing, although Senator Stoller is still involved, but Senator Kaler is the primary sponsor now of this bill in the Senate. I've talked to him about the difficulty in getting it through the House. He said to me, "Don't worry, we'll get it through." So I hope he's right. But he's the primary sponsor. Where am I here? Okay, so is this a good idea? Well, it puts population growth into areas that need it. I didn't know this until I ran for the council. The south side of Peoria, when I was a kid, had about 50,000 people living in it. Today, it has 14,000 people. Okay, so And these areas used to be very middle class. There were poor people, there were rich people, but mostly middle class people in those neighborhoods. So we get that population growth back in to those neighborhoods. And with that, of course, new investment into areas that really need new investment. I don't think there's been a building permit issued in these areas for a brand new home that is owner occupied for at least 5 years. There have been some habitat houses built and a couple other things, but nothing where the owner occupier is the person who's building that home and living in it. Okay, we get more middle class residents, which we need for stability in those neighborhoods. And we get a little more than we would normally get because of this income tax rebate. Oops, I'm sorry. Can I go backwards here? Yeah, all right. When you start getting that infill coming into those neighborhoods, you start getting more and more people owning their homes, etc. Crime goes down. That happens every time this is tried in a residential area. And what we end up with is a better quality of life for everybody who lives there, the new folks and the folks that are there now. And unlike most of our other programs, this program encourages mixed incomes in these neighborhoods rather than just one kind of income. And as your chairman said, it doesn't use any public money, unlike most of our other programs. And basically, it works. So, are questions proper? Yes. Are there any questions?
Call them as you see them.
Yes, sir.
A lot of these different grants, if you will, when they're being sponsored, they force prevailing wage in commercial and development. Is that prevailing wage an issue here also in residential?
No, it is not, because each new home is handled just like any other new home in the city of Peoria. The city, the public is putting no money into this. They can't make any more rules than we usually have. We have rules on zoning, we have building codes, etc. That's it. So if the same rules apply as in any other neighborhood with new construction. Any other questions?
I have a question. This is Auditor Thomas.
Yes.
My question is, the tax abatement is one side to it, but you're speaking of your goal is to, or your demographic is the middle class population, growing that in those communities to sustain the base. I believe there's a missing component to the plan, and that component is economic growth with the community members that are currently residing in the community, so they can then become that middle class community, building homes and revitalizing the community. What plans do you have for that?
First of all, you're absolutely right. There's nothing here that provides jobs specifically, except that if this is successful, we're going to have a lot of construction going on. Construction is an interesting industry. You can take someone with very low skills and bring them into the construction industry and surely, slowly but surely train them up and train them up and train them up. So I think there will be jobs for the neighborhood in this, especially if it really gets going. Really getting more jobs in this city is another program I'm working on. but not this one. But at the same time, I would, at the risk of misunderstanding, We've got hundreds, maybe we've got 1,000 vacant lots in these neighborhoods. We're going to hopefully fill those vacant lots slowly but surely. Perhaps in a couple places very close to downtown, some developer will come along and take a whole block and put up townhouses or something like that. But in general, we're talking individual homes through here. The result in other places has been that you end up with a mixed neighborhood income-wise. It isn't just all middle class. It's the middle class is in there, poor people are in there, there's a few wealthy people in there, but this is not to displace the people who are there now. We have lots of room. You know, that idea of 50,000 people used to live in a place where 14,000 people live now, and that's just the south side. We've got a lot of room.
Mr. Kelly, Treasurer Bjerke has a question for you.
I'm not opposed to, but what I would like is the time to research this to see if this can be done electronically, or if this is going to be very much a manual process to just take two districts out and transfer those to some bank account either held by the county or the city. I don't know who was mentioned for certain parcels in a certain area. So I would like the time to research this to make sure this is something my software company can accommodate. And if not, then I'm going to have to brainstorm how to best manage the program out there to get the money to the right spot.
I don't purport to know your job, but to me it sounds like what you do with the enterprise zone. When somebody does something that qualifies in the enterprise zone, something in your software identifies that property and gives the abatement for X number of years from the various taxing bodies. Now, I don't know how that works, but it seems to me it would be similar to that. I'm sorry. Yes.
Certain banks based on whether it's a TIF or whether it's a regular library or the regular.
Okay.
So that's automatically set up in the system to go there. So when Peoria County does it, all our money goes to one bank account.
Mm-hmm.
So in each individual parcel, I would have to go in and change that for Peoria County to go to a different spot. Or I'd have to figure out what the dollar amount is for just two of those districts for that parcel, and then take that money out and then transfer it on a whole bunch of different parcels.
I hope a whole bunch of different. Yes. Yes.
If it's something that can be done electronically through our software, then great. So I just want the board and everybody to know that and to just have a little time to research that and see if it's something that we can do through our software system.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. Mr. Ricker, and then Mr. Renaud.
I guess just for clarity, you've talked about the city and the county as taxing bodies, but are you asking all taxing bodies to forego the tax, or is it just targeted ones?
It's my understanding that, say, the school district can't, they have to spend their money on schools. They really, they can't get real ambitious with their money. The airport authority has to put their money into the airport, you know, ICC, et cetera. The city and the county are these general governments that do any number of things, and it would kind of fall within their purview. I also, so that's the main reason Mr. Riker, for just the city and the county doing this. This is going to cut the amount of possible money down quite a bit as well, but I don't think that these other taxing bodies are free to spend money on economic development for the city. Yes, sir.
So would the schools still get their tax money, or they wouldn't get it on the house part? Because basically most people's tax bill is, I've come to the conclusion, is 2/3 to 3/4 of their tax bill just goes to the schooling
Right.
part. And so if those are still gonna get their money, the tax break you're really giving them really isn't that much money.
Okay,
Say.
if I understand your question correctly, school district and the other taxing bodies remain the same. So if they're getting $1 right now, they'll continue to get the $1. If this is successful at all, the land value is going to rise. That's taxable. So they'll actually get more money even while abatement is going on.
My question is, are they're just gonna get, would the schools just get the money for the land, or would they get it for the house too? Is this a tax abatement? Nobody gets any money for the house per se? Because I mean, your
Yes,
lot's
that's right.
only gonna be $500. We'll say that on maybe a lot in Peoria. That you pay taxes on, but if you put a $150,000 house on there, which would be a small house by today's standards, your tax base may be $4,000 or $5,000. Well, are they going to get the $4,500 abatement, or will the schools still get their money because?
All taxing bodies under this statute, all taxing bodies share in the abatement applies to all the taxing bodies. Okay? Yeah. And but all taxing bodies also benefit by rising land values if that happens. But remember too that, for instance, Peoria Public Schools or Peoria Park District or whatever, or the city and the county, their tax take from these neighborhoods has been going down for decades. Okay? This, I hope, will arrest that decline and start moving in the right direction.
Mr. Renault, Ms. Pastuccia next.
Thank you. My question is, some of these older neighborhoods, I mean, obviously now houses are built a lot bigger than they are back when most of these neighborhoods were developed, so the lot sizes are going to be smaller.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything in place that if somebody wants to build over 2 lots, that it'll be a streamlined zoning process so that they can build on 2 lots? Or is there infrastructure there that will support larger homes, and who will pay for that?
Okay. First of all, city codes say if that lot, no matter how narrow it is, once held a house, you can build a house on it. Okay, so even though the codes seem to say houses should be bigger and wider and all that, you know, if that held a house before, you can put a house on it. Now, to combine 2 lots, that's really not a problem. And as far as infrastructure is concerned, if the infrastructure could handle 2 homes, it can certainly handle 1, you know, with the plumbing and electrical and, you know, all that. So I'm not a builder, but I don't think that would be a problem. Is that answer your question?
I just know a lot of times sewer lines and water lines are old and need replaced in those areas. And if that would be part of it, that would be great to get rid of some of the lead possibly. But I think that's important too, is just to make sure that some of that infrastructure supports
actually,
new builds.
Also, there have been, if close in, you know, where the land is going to end up to be more valuable, close into downtown. If a developer wants to buy a whole block and redevelop that whole block into townhouses or whatever, there is a thought out there that just for that development, there may be, because it's standard, you know, with new construction anymore and something like that, that we separate the sewers. Even though the sewers aren't separated anyplace else in the neighborhood, we'll separate those sewers. And then if another one is built, that'll hook into those separated sewers, et cetera, and start addressing some of our CSO problems. That's sort of not pie in the sky, but that's kind of a long-term thing that may happen and it may not. But when somebody undertakes something like that, you got to bring everything kind of up to par, even with a single home.
Kate, then Mr. Dillon.
For the, not the new construction, but the
Rehabs?
the rehab part of this, is that available to only homeowners as well, or is that available to landlords?
The way that bill has been written, it would only be owner-occupied, okay, for the moment. I mean, I'd like to I'd like to extend this to everyone. I'd like to extend it citywide, but we have to follow the statute. So the amendment that's being proposed in Springfield, or that has been proposed in Springfield, only treats with rehabs that are owner-occupied.
And do you know what percentage of the homes that are existing in these areas are owner-occupied versus landlord-owned?
No, I do not.
Mr. Dillon?
Thanks, Mr. Kelly. So back to a couple different points here. So Rob's question about construction. You know that to be true and accurate, that you can rebuild, because most new codes have variances in them and setback clauses. So typically when you purchase a house, and if you're in an older neighborhood, even your insurance company asks for the ordinance or whatever that's in a city, because you cannot, some of these lots in the south end are super skinny, where you can touch the houses currently, that there's no practical way to build. So the only way they allow you to rebuild on it is if the current foundation is set so that it's grandfathered in. Because if you have a garage pad that's poured, the only way you can build a new garage on it is if you build on that current pad. Because if you tear that pad out and move it, you have to meet setback standards. So I would find that odd if the city did allow that to do that. So is that a factual statement for the city allows you to build that back? Or is that?
That's what I've been told, because it's a question that I've had as well, with or without tax abatement. Perhaps had I asked a further question like you're proposing, I might have gotten a different answer.
So then following up on that too is the PowerPoints I find grossly inaccurate then if the city's portion is about 10%, the county's portion is 10%. So to say 100% rebate, you're talking 20% rebate if nobody else is going to participate via schools.
Right. That's right.
So how is it 100% rebate on the PowerPoint? Because it's not 100% rebate.
I hope I didn't say it was 100% rebate.
Years 1 to 6 are 100%.
Pardon?
Years 1 to 6 are 100% rebate.
No,
Year 7
no.
is 8.
Abatement, not rebate.
Well, abatement.
100% abatement.
Well, sorry. rebate versus abatement, I did get that term wrong, but abatement, so it's not 100%, it's 20%.
Yes, it is. It's 100%. All the taxing bodies are involved on the abatement, not on the rebate. 100% of my tax on my new house, okay, from the school district, the park district, the airport authority, ICC, it's abated across the board.
Okay, so that was confusing earlier whether or not, because I was under understanding they weren't going to abate it.
No, actually, under the statute, they don't have a choice.
For the land value or the value of the new structure included?
The value of the new structure is the only thing that's going to get abatement, and they don't have any choice about whether or not they're going to participate. They automatically participate.
In that respect, it's like the TIF, where all the
Yeah.
governments are in at the same haircut
Yeah.
until the discounts fade. The exception being that's on the improved value. The land value creeps in whatever direction market takes it, and that is not subject to the abatement.
Is that clear?
Yeah, I understand it now because there was a little bit of confusion, which was Paul's question on that. And I just have to say it as a construction worker, to say that we're low skilled, you just insulted a whole industry in there. But to say that I can take somebody and make anybody a plumber, we're highly skilled, highly technical. Most people that I know in half of my apprenticeship class had college degrees. So I do find it a little insulting to say that you can take anybody and make them a construction worker, because it is a high cost to have a construction worker on the job. So just from a formality, every job that you do has a skill to it. So, and you're looking for the right thing. So to say construction workers are unskilled or low skilled is not a factual statement.
I did not say that.
You
I did not say that. I said that there are jobs in the construction industry that are low skilled. I know because I had some of them when I was a kid. You know, that doesn't mean I knew how to plumb a house or that I knew how to run electricity. You know, but there are some jobs, and that's what I was speaking of. Not that it is a low skill profession or anything of the sort. I'm sorry if I misspoke.
I didn't take it that way, Jimmy, or I'd have busted him, so. Kate?
I just want to thank Jimmy for bringing up the question about whether or not you truly can build on a property that previously had a house on it. Because years ago, I was on the City of Peoria Property Maintenance Commission, and I know that there was an individual who was very upset because he had purchased a plot of land that did have a house on it at one time, was now vacant, and he was under the assumption that he could build, and he was not able to because of the change in the zoning laws. So I think it's important to clarify whether or not that's truly accurate description of what you can do with a now vacant property that used to own a home.
And that issues that you've had in the Heights when we've discussed about that the lots are so small, and I know the chairman's talked about it, we've talked about it, and Nicole's talked about it, and I get that it's one of the city's main issues, taking care of so many vacant lots. Like the news last night, house fire, the lot's demoed. Typically what happens is that lot sits there forever because now you have a lien on the property for the thing. It goes to auction. Is how do you get people to build houses? So some of these lots we've talked about, and I know John Gordon Booth's talked about it and other people have talked about it, is can you create like a land banking system where that you combine some of these lots and make actual bigger buildable lots down there to actually attract people, because that's one of the things that people like is they go out north because you can get an acre of land, a half acre of land, whereas if you live in the inner part of the city, it's touch your neighbor. And I've grown up in West Peoria, growing up now living in the manor, you literally can touch your neighbor in your house. So I mean, we've had those conversations in the past, but there's some other issues I think that definitely have to be worked through for something like this to work.
And maybe it could be considered that the city change its own zoning rules. And I think it's something that should definitely be looked into, because if you have this plan to rebuild all these lots, but the zoning rules make it impossible, I think that's worth examining on the city's side.
I think it's a very good point.
Mr. Dillon?
AR, and I know it's a concern for, it'd be a concern for myself too, and I think that's what Ms. Thomas was alluding to, is getting to make sure that there's not gentrification taking place, that people that have lived in this community their whole life, one, then no longer can afford to live in the area as property values rise, so they have to move, and you're pushing people that have lived there their entire life out of that. So I know a concern for a lot of people would be, how does this plan specifically address not gentrification?
It does not address it. My thought is that if we really got to the point that you describe, then perhaps we would have to address it. The thing is, we have a dearth of people. We have fewer people every year living there. Now it's cheaper and cheaper every year to live there, and they don't want to live there. Okay, they liked it when it was a little more expensive to live there, because there was less crime, less this, less that. Okay, where that line is, I don't know. But I think one thing we all know is that these areas need more people and they need more investment. And if we pay more and more and more to preserve today isn't so hot. I think most of these folks, even if it costs more, would much rather live in a safer neighborhood. They'd much rather live in a neighborhood that is a building. You know, they'd like to live in a neighborhood where there are more kids around, where you can sit on the front porch. What we have now is not working, and we've got program after program after program that enforces what we have. And it just drives people out. This is a program that goes the other direction. To me, this is progress. And I think the people in these neighborhoods would like that kind of progress, even if it costs them more money. You're talking about their land value, you know, going from, I mean, their house value won't change. Their land value goes from 70 cents a foot to $2 a foot. Well, it's a small part of their tax bill. And what do they get in return? You know, to me, I think it's a good trade-off.
Councilman Kelly, I have another question for you. This is Auditor Thomas. Or can I go, or did someone else lined up?
I see another hand in the room. Did I see yours, Kate? Okay. Auditor, go ahead. We're going to wrap this up here after your question.
Okay. Again, Councilman Kelly, I think your plan is good, but I think that it's only like a portion of it, and there may be two other portions that we're not really touching on to make it really a cohesive plan. I, for one, was born and raised in the south side of Peoria. My family, my parents still live there. They own their home. They owned it before I was born. And my brother owns property on the south side of Peoria as well. I think that if I could sit down with you and discuss, because the touching on gentrification, I think it's some things that the concepts that are just not are just not hitting. You're just not understanding, you know. And I think it requires a conversation beyond this 1 hour meeting to understand. So I would love to have an opportunity to sit down with you and kind of discuss it to make this a more cohesive plan where you're taking into account the people who are still living there and the people you want to get to come back.
That I would very much enjoy that. Please,
Okay.
I'll get your info from someone.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Kate?
Sorry, just one more comment. I
All
don't
right.
want you to think that personally my questions are that I'm against this. I think it's an excellent idea. I also grew up on Madison Avenue in one of these zones that is targeted in this program, and I think it's excellent there are a lot of empty lots, and they need to be filled, and we need to do something to draw people to want to live to these neighborhoods again. So I don't want you to think that my questions mean that I'm against this program. I think it's a great idea. I just think that, similar to what Jessica mentioned, I think there's still a lot of questions and a lot of uncertainties about how exactly this is going to work. So thank you for bringing this to us.
Thank you. I did not have that impression.
Thank you, everyone, for giving Councilman Kelly some time. I've been through this project in concept of his, actually, since he was running for office, and it took me about 2 years to understand what he was talking about. And if you understood in the hour he's been here today, you're way ahead. It's interesting, problems like gentrification are the problems we hope this creates, even though that's flippant sounding to the ear that wants to avoid it. This is a corridor of our community that has all the streets, maybe some sidewalks need repair, all the sewer, water, electric. These lots require very, very little development investment, very little clearing, and it's sort of all upside. That's what makes this so interesting to me, is the investment for governments now. Governments, you have to remember there's neighbors that live there. It's like a triple win. So I appreciate you taking some hard questions in here. I don't think anybody means to delay you. City Council will be voting on this next month. I asked him to make sure we had a chance to hear it, since we're one of those silent partners in the project, and I would count on him to carry forward some of your points of view as soon as he gets this thing rolling. So thanks a lot, John. Mr. Clerk?
Get informational items, sir.
I gotta pull my screen back up, okay. All right, informational items, Mr. Sorrell.
Springdale, I don't have anything specifically to report, but I know members Daly and Pastusha could do that way better than I could, since they represent you on that board. Hearing nothing from either one of them, we can
Great.
move on to the GAP and CDAP loan reports. You can see from the materials in the packet that in the CDAP fund there are no outstanding loans. All loans have been paid in full, which means you've got just a couple of dollars under $760,000 available to loan if there were any loans in the queue. And then in terms of loans that had been made to out of the Keystone Fund, there are a couple, one being Quest, one being Hare Racing. Those are current. Truskers, due to COVID, we have an agreement to extend and restructure their amortization schedule, and they're within the guidelines of that restructured amortization schedule. And there's roughly $7.95 million to use on a variety of economic development purposes. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Looking to the room. All right, thank you. Any of the committee chairpersons that need to leave early? We'll start with the Operations Committee chairperson. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We had two resolutions. The first was an animal control contract with the Village of Norwood. When we re-upped the rest of the contracts, Norwood did not want to be in part of those, and then has since decided that they do want services for PCAPs, so that passed unanimously. And then also there's an extension of the emergency paid sick leave that's COVID related that we extended for 3 more months.
Thank you. Any questions for Rob? Or any illumination required? Seeing none. Do you have a hand up, Phil? You're up, Phil.
The very first one had to do with a road surfacing project that is out in Hannah City, about a mile from the city, I should say east. It's called Green Gold Road, and Logan Township, they are going to use Rebuild Illinois funds, and they're going to use a more fuel tax. So it's not going to cost us at all. Bid came in under estimation. It was $129,000 to do the project. They originally had estimated $141,000. And that project, we are recommending that R.A. Conan from Tremont get that bid. The second resolution is the multi-township their seal coating and their tilling. And there was all of the different townships are involved in this bid, but Porter, who was a low bidder on much of this, they were disqualified mainly because they had overextended themselves. Now, the other two who bid was Pavement Maintenance. They are out of Henry, and again Conan, who is out of Tremont. So those two got most of the bids on the various townships. Two of the townships, Millbrook and Rosefield, they decided that they were going to, actually they rejected the second bidder, which was Conan. And they may come back later on and deal with our highway engineer. The third project was our annual partnership that the highway department does with Bradley's engineering department. And that's the pavement management project. That's where they go out and they study our pavements and so forth. They gather the data. They submit it then, of course, to our highway department, and they'll go ahead and they will then evaluate and decide what is to be done in regards to these on the priority basis. Any questions, Mr. Chairman?
Thank you, Phil. Any questions for Mr. Salzer? Ms. Daly?
I just have one question. What is tilling? Oh, I thought that was called milling. And what you get at the end are millings, right?
Similar process.
Okay.
I'm going to throw the white flag out and let Amy clear that up next month. Don't see her sticking her head in, so good catch, good rejoinder, nice try. We'll try to get that definition cleared up for you. Other comments or questions for Mr. Salzer? Okay, thank you. Next chairperson would be Mr. Dillon. Oh, I'm sorry, Ways and Means, Mr. Ricker.
Okay. So for Ways and Means, we had two resolutions, the monthly delinquent taxes, which passed unanimously, and then we had an intergovernmental agreement with West Peoria for assessment services. And that was a result of a change that was made after the November election to have the West Peoria Township dissolve, and therefore the West Peoria City takes over responsibility. So the agreement we had with the township now moves to the city of West Peoria. So it's just the cleaning up the paperwork, and that passed unanimously.
Has it escaped the public's awareness that a township government was removed from the map?
To me, it's something we should highlight, but that's That's one person's opinion. But no one brought it up otherwise.
Mr. Dillon, are you a commish as well as a board member?
So I used to be on the township prior to when I first got onto the board, and then I also held a seat on there. So that was a long process to get, and they had to ask for state legislation so that you could eliminate coterminous townships. And TOI is a very powerful lobby influence, so to get a bill like that was a heavy lift. But coterminous townships, what that means is the township fully lies inside the city. So general assistance does not disappear. They will still have to provide general assistance, but there was no more road commissioner or anything. That the city handled it all other than general assistance. So it was a long process led by former Chairwoman Kennedy of the county board, who became the supervisor. So you had 4 trustees and a supervisor that put on the ballot to try to basically eliminate their jobs. And then it will roll into the city, and the city will take care of all the duties going forward. It was confusing to people, no matter how you try to explain it or language on it, thinking, oh, is the city leaving or what's happening? Because most people don't realize, even if you live in Peoria, there's still a Peoria township. So in the rural parts, townships are the ones that you see all the time, but in the cities, so this was legislation and it passed, and kudos to the city West Peoria trying to make it more efficient. And so we always talk about how many units of government in Illinois. There's officially one less.
Now, what is the effective date of that, Mr. Dillon?
I believe it's in May it's sometime later this year when the terms are over. So the terms of the current board members finish in May, and then so the townships would be in the April general elections, just like municipalities are. So they will finish their term through April, and when they would reseat in May is when the township officially is dissolved.
Okay, well, be sure to put that newspaper headline in your next time capsule for your next township building or city hall. That's amazing. I don't know how I missed it, but any questions then for Jimmy on his, Mr. Ricker on his agenda? Seeing none, next up, Mr. Dillon.
So if you saw the report under informational, but we still put it to the full board so that it would be on record, there was some Dollar General cases. So that had gone to, I know Mr. Fennell is very well aware of the Dollar General was looking to locate, but it was within the 1.5 mile radius of the city of Chillicothe. It went to ZBA, and it did not pass through ZBA. So the petitioner at any point can withdraw the motion to proceed. So the petitioner withdrew in the meantime, which was Dollar General. So it would have gone to us as not passing ZBA, but knowing that it didn't pass ZBA, the petitioner pulled it, but we still could have probably not even had it on there, but that way it's in the record. So it was still on there. And then the last case, we had a zoning case where somebody had purchased some land. There's a current house on it. They're looking to split the 1.5 acre that has a house on it so that they can sell that house. They're going to fix it up and sell it. And then the remaining acreage, they are going to be building a new house on. So pretty standard. That was unanimous vote through ZBA and everything. So that was land use.
Thank you very much. Any questions from Mr. Dillon? Mr. Ricker?
I don't want to go a lot of details, Jimmy, but could you share maybe the general areas that the ZBA had concerns about, just for an educational standpoint, on the Dollar General one?
So one of the main ones was inconsistent land use. Originally, the township was okay with it with the road access, but there was concerns about the road access, which I don't know if that was one of the reasons of ZBA, but primarily inconsistent land use because they have to rezone the land to be proper land. The city of Chillicothe did not force our hand in it, but the city council had made a vote and did not want that because municipalities have zoning privileges within 1.5 miles of the city. So that was within that 1.5 mile city. the main purpose was inconsistent land use, but I believe, unless you know off the top of your head, Scott, there was.
No, that's correct, Mr. Dillon. There's 3 cases total. One's a land split, one's a rezoning, and one is for special use within the zoning class that they were requesting. All 3 had negative recommendations from the staff, and as Mr. Dillon reported, the ZBA concurred with the staff recommendation. City of Chillicothe did vote in objection to it, but they did not file that objection with the clerk, which means that if it would have come, it would have been a simple majority instead of a super majority for this board to consider. And I believe there were 54 or 58 objections from surrounding property owners.
Thank you, Mr. Fennell.
The reason Chillicothe was opposing it was because they already have a Dollar General in Chillicothe, and a mile and a half further away, they estimated it would be $100,000 worth of revenue lost, and for another one to be located that close. So that's the reason.
Public safety and justice would be next.
Public safety.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We had one resolution that we voted on. It was an intergovernmental agreement between the Illinois Office of the Comptroller and the Peoria County Circuit Clerk. Basically, the Comptroller's office is now going to help the Circuit Clerk get the money back that people haven't paid in fines and so forth, that they will, I assume, take it out of their tax refund or whatever. There were some laws changed that's why the circuit clerk was wanting to sign up for this. There's no cost to the county, so that should be a plus. The second one that we have to do a poll vote on later is with the MEG unit. They have the federal, anytime they do federal confiscation of drug bust or whatever, that money went into a special account that they had. The federal says that has to go to some type of municipality group such as the sheriff. So the sheriff is going to take that over, but we have to poll vote on that later on this month before the next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Paul? And I think the role of the sheriff is just to be the fiduciary for that account. We don't get the money, right?
He doesn't get the money. I'll just cut the checks for him, is all.
The keeper of the checkbook.
Keeper of the checkbook, yes,
Thank
sir.
you. Any other questions here? We would then move to Mr. Fennell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We had one resolution, and it was a rollover of 2021 encumbrance. The purchase orders that were not completed, but we still had the appropriations for them, so it was rolled over. That's the only one we had, and passed unanimously.
Thank you. Any questions? Ms. Williams.
I don't have a question, but I wanted to comment on Health Committee. So just if there are
Please.
questions regarding his report, then I'd like to talk after that, please.
Please do. At what point would you like to get in?
Okay, I just wanted to make sure there wasn't any questions on his report. I just want everyone to know that the Health Committee, you'll be hearing from either Scott or Jan or Amy Roberts with the Health Department. The Health Committee is going to start meeting every 2 weeks over the next couple of months. So we need to figure out time, date, and it looks like we're going to be meeting at the Health Department. So I just wanted everybody to be aware that that's going to be coming. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? I think we're going to be at miscellaneous, is that right? Sorry. Saving paper. It's a good thing. Since we do have an executive session today, I'll go to miscellaneous first so we can clear the order up. Questions under miscellaneous, comments going around the room from left to right? Okay, Today, Kate and I had completed a draft. Looked pretty good. I would say the final version of a letter to Scott regarding our decisions from executive session a few weeks ago. The contract between Mr. Sorrell and the county is still back and forth between counsel for Scott and counsel for the county board. Is there any question that anyone has that we're able to talk about in open session at this point? So would it be, and I just don't know why I seem to have forgotten the step we agreed to, but would it be your will that we then meet with Scott and that we would be, and Ms. Bastucci and I, and issue the results of the evaluation? Okay. Does that require any other commentary in open session? I'm missing some kind of piece out we've done.
Mr. Chairman, I would just say that based on what the state's attorney's office has been able to share with me, without divulging any of the confidences of closed session, we may need an executive committee meeting the day of the board meeting for the committee to consider the changes you've proposed to the employment agreement.
Indeed, which we have not had a chance to see ourselves, so that would be good work. Okay, is everybody confused or everybody clear? Kate, you clear? You're confused, cool. Happy St. Patrick's Day, by the way. All right, can I get a motion then to go to executive session for the purpose of discussing pending litigation? Thank you, Mr. Salzer. Thank you, Mr. Dillon. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Aye. Aye.
Okay.
You
so-
ayes or nays? On the phone. Betty, were you an aye or a nay?
All right, so what I think we ought to do is restart that call and have them, we'll admit them into the session, is that right?
So board members, or committee members, we'll go ahead and hang up and we will contact you to get you into the closed session.